Hello, Cleveland. Welcome to the Dogland Podcast. I am your host, Anthony Joki. As always, I got my co-host Jackson McCurry alongside with me. Jack, man, how we doing?
Doing good, man. We're finally into March. It's starting to warm up a little bit here in Ohio, although the cold is coming back in for a couple days. But, the weather's warming up, the rumors are heating up, and we're getting closer and closer to free agency and pretty soon the draft as well. So we're rolling along here.
You know why I'm happy about the weather warming up?
What's that?
Golf season.
Yes, golf season.
My league is starting probably close to the end of the month, and I can't believe that the winter just kind of flew by. It's been about 5 months or so since I played. I'm anxious to get back out there and whatnot. And it's always nice when springtime comes around because you know that the golf season is right around the corner. So I'm excited for that. But we have a lot to talk about on this podcast today because the thing for the last few weeks has been where is J.J. Watt going to decide to play next season, and today he decided to go to the Arizona Cardinals on a 2-year deal for $31 million. I know that kind of came out of the blue, I guess, because there was a lot of speculation that he was going to go to Green Bay or Buffalo or Cleveland or even Pittsburgh, play alongside his brother. But he decided to choose the Arizona Cardinals, and when you look at Arizona's makeup, and they have a fantastic young quarterback there in Kyler Murray. They have a decent defense. Do you feel that this was the right move for J.J. Watt at this point in his career when you would kind of think that it's about winning championships right now?
Honestly, no, because that was the perception ever since he was released from Houston, was that he's going to find a spot where he can compete for a Super Bowl, because he spent his whole career in Houston and never even got to the conference championship. And when you looked at all the teams that were being rumored, Green Bay, who was just in the NFC title game, Buffalo, that was in the AFC title game, Cleveland, who is on their way to where they'll be competing for, conference championships and Super Bowls. Even Tennessee's been in the hunt the last couple of years. Pittsburgh, I mean, they speak for themselves as well. Arizona was rumored because DeAndre Hopkins said he was going to recruit, but I don't think anybody thought that, J.J. Watt was going to take them seriously as a legit pursuit or a legit contender for his services. But lo and behold, it happened. Even after the funny Peloton rumors and scuttlebutt that happened this morning, which just amazes me that, these kind of things still happen. Ever since the LeBron airplane tracker back in 2014, these things seem to happen more and more. But Arizona has some pieces on defense. Kyler Murray has shown potential, and the pieces that are on offense. But if you had to rank all the teams that were in the hunt, I would have put Arizona last, just because despite the talent that they have, they're nowhere close to being Super Bowl contenders, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinions, compared to the other teams in the hunt for Watt.
Well, and you look at that division too, right? You have the Rams in that division. Obviously, you have Arizona, you have Seattle, and why the fourth team is escaping me at this moment.
San Francisco.
Thank you, San Francisco. I just had a complete brain fart, but it happens, I guess. But yeah, you look at those four teams. Three of those teams are playoff teams, I think. So it's not exactly an easy division to get through throughout the season. So it's certainly not going to be easy for Arizona to I would imagine they can make the playoffs in the NFC, but it's not going to be easy for them to get out of the NFC in terms of making it to the Super Bowl or even making it to the NFC Championship game. I don't know. Maybe the thing about winning championships isn't as important as we all thought it might be. At this point in his career, maybe he's still a couple years away from going ring chasing. But it just leaves the question now for the Browns. Where do we go next, right? Because you still have a hole on the other side opposite Myles Garrett. Um, it's not having Olivier Vernon next year, potentially, depending on if they resign him or not. There's an obvious need there at the other edge position. Where do the Browns go from here after missing out on J.J. Watt?
I mean, anytime a big name like J.J. Watt goes out there, and the Browns are involved, like for one thing that, the players around the league can see that the Browns are building something, and that's why they're taking them legit as, a potential destination now. And I think you're going to see veterans that are looking to contend and compete for Super Bowls are going to take the Browns more seriously just because of the direction Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski have put this franchise in going forward. When it comes to the edge rusher, obviously, I wouldn't bank on Olivier Vernon just because the Achilles injury it's going to take time. He's not going to be ready by the time the season starts. Maybe he comes in midway if he's healthy enough to contribute, that the Browns, take a look at him. You look at the free agent options. Carl Lawson is a name a lot of people are looking at. Von Miller's name is still out there, although, if people that have paid attention, there's still that criminal investigation that was reported in January that Denver police was looking into. We never heard anything else about it. I would be leery of picking up a guy like Von Miller, despite the Hall of Fame talent that he has, just because that situation's still unresolved. You also look at other potential options. Jack Duffin mentioned Romeo Okara. I can't even say his name right. He's from Detroit. There's another name out there that's a potential option. But there's options out there. Obviously, the draft is coming as well. So I would expect the Browns to address the edge position opposite Myles Garrett. But I think when we go into free agency, Anthony, I think the focus should be on upgrading the safety spot, the cornerback spot, helping upgrade that secondary, because I feel like that's more of a position where the Browns need to go after in free agency and get some more talent in the back end of the defense.
Yeah, I think the draft is probably much better suited for the Browns to get an edge player in, just because, obviously you saw the amount that J.J. Watt got, right? $15.5 million over those 2 years. Not sure exactly what the cap hit is going to be for this season, but it's certainly a much better, much more viable route financially for them to go in the draft. Now, obviously, it's not proven if you were to put a rookie defensive end out there opposite Myles Garrett, but you have guys like Adrian Claiborne, probably bringing back Porter Gustin, guys like that who can help, and obviously Myles as well, but can help mentor a rookie guy who could be expected to go out there, split reps rotationally, stuff like that. But I'm with you. I think that the secondary is the needs to be the main focus in terms of spending the assets in terms of financial dollars and the cap space to help that out. Linebacker is rather far down that list. I know we're going to talk about that here in a minute, but personally, I would rather take that $15.5 million roughly that would have gone to J.J. Watt and maybe sign 2 players to help out the secondary, and I think you could probably do that in terms of how solid that player could be for roughly around $8 million.
Yeah, or I mean, if they're going to go big game hunting in free agency, like Marcus Williams, who New Orleans is reportedly going to try to keep, which I still don't understand how they'd be able to do that when they're so far in the red in terms of salary cap. But that would be that's my number one target for the Browns in free agency. to help solidify the free safety spot. I know a lot of people are, high on Grant Delpit, but I just don't think that's a legit option. Or you can't legitimately depend on a guy coming off an Achilles injury and a guy that's never taken a snap in the NFL. I know Delpit's talented, but Marcus Williams' track record speaks for himself. He's going to be sought after in free agency, but the Browns are limited. They have around 21 million in cap space. Of course, they can restructure some deals and free up some more money. But like you, Anthony, if they could get two guys, two signings worth that $15.5 million that JJ Watt just signed for to help on defense, if they get an edge and a safety, or an edge and a corner, or a corner and a safety, there's so many things that they can do with the resources they have. They could also go out in the trade market, but I mean, if they can, help get a couple pieces on that defense to where, and the defense isn't that far away, I think in terms of talent, they need a couple pieces, and I think they can get that this offseason. But spending it all on one guy like a JJ Watt might not have been the best direction, and they need to focus on, keeping guys that are free agents now, and also looking at other options in free agency as well.
Yeah, with free agency, I think because the Browns are in a unique position to where players actually want to come here now, and have a chance at winning a championship, which is still bizarre to say and talk about, but some of those players may not require as much money if they want to go to a place to win. It's certainly there's certainly opportunities there for players who, especially veterans, who want maybe have one last chance at winning, or maybe have a few years left, and they want to go to a place where they could compete for a Super Bowl and a Lombardi Trophy. And I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to get over that, but I would tend to think also that this J.J. Watt signing probably bodes well for Sheldon Richardson and Jack Duffin, who's been just pumping out tremendous content for the Dogland. If you guys have not had a chance to listen or read to the work that Jack Duffin has put in, whether it be the roster deep dive, or looking at contract extensions for Baker Mayfield and other players, or whether it was this article today about Sheldon Richardson of what maybe a potential extension could look like. Jack, I would tend to think that if the Browns would have signed J.J. Watt, that Sheldon Richardson could have definitely been on the chopping block in terms of salary if they needed to add other pieces, which we believe that they do. But now that Watt decided to go to Arizona, I would tend to think that bodes well for Sheldon Richardson being on the Browns next season.
At least for now, I would think. I mean, they still could go out and sign maybe a Yannick Ngakoue or another one of these edge rushers out in free that are going to be available in free agency. I wouldn't say Richardson's safe right now. I would think he probably feels a little better right now, because I do agree, if they would have signed J.J. Watt, Richardson probably would have been out the door. He still could be in the next couple of weeks before free agency starts, and I would hope, if the Browns are going to move him, that they do it before free agency so that he has a chance to find a new home for the 2021 season. But I'm sure he's breathing a little easier at the moment. I'm sure they've had the discussions with his agent, talking about what they could do. But like you said, you were talking about Jack, he does pump out some great work. He pumped out a great piece today talking about what a potential extension would look like for Sheldon Richardson. I don't know if the Browns would sign him to an extension. It might have to be a little bit lower than what Jack proposed, but Richardson's been a solid player. They could upgrade at D tackle for sure, but Richardson comes in. He's one of the leaders on defense. He does his job, and he's a good part, but he's also replaceable at the end of the day.
Well, on the other side of it, though, you kind of almost need a sure thing, right? Because you don't know what's going to happen with Larry Ogunjobi at this point and free agency. So you almost need to see what happens on that front before you make any kind of move regarding Sheldon Richardson.
No. We know what's going to happen. He's not coming back. I mean, let's just be honest.
Yeah,
Larry.
Right.
I mean, Larry's a good dude, and the fans seem to love him, but he has underachieved. Ever since his rookie year, he's trended downward. They do have Jordan Elliott, who they hope makes a jump in the second year. But yeah, I mean, you do need a sure thing, but also Richardson's not worth what he's making. Maybe if he takes a pay cut, but then you get to that situation, and Jack's talked about it. If you're going to take a pay cut, I mean, that pretty much says either take what we're offering you or you're going to get cut. So they may keep him just because they do need guys at the position. They may be looking at options in free agency that they could find, and they got Andrew Billings coming back too. I mean, we tend to forget about him a lot. But yeah, I mean, Richardson's going to be there, at least for the time being. We'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks. But I mean, I would keep him personally, but I can understand if the Browns want to let him go because he's just not worth the money he's making at this point.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out. I know the defensive line it certainly has the potential to look a lot different in 2021 in the new season. And we thought the D line was in really good shape, but you lose Larry Ogunjobi. Probably going to lose Olivier Vernon. So, this defensive front is certainly going to look much different. It's whether or not Sheldon Richardson is going to be back. So, obviously the mainstay on that defensive line is Myles Garrett. And, when you have a player like that, it's certainly we're certainly going to find out to see what the other three defensive linemen are going to look like come the end of free agency and the draft, and I think both fronts will give us plenty of insight to of what that's going to look like heading into the new season. Speaking of free agents, over the weekend, it was Friday, right? Rashard Higgins was on ESPN Cleveland, and he was they were talking about his free agency and potentially re-signing with the Browns. And I'm going to paraphrase the quote here because I don't have the exact thing in front of me. But, he pretty much said to on the airwaves, hey, Andrew Berry, send over the papers and I'll sign them. Obviously, it sparked a large discussion on Twitter. And, it's only right that we discuss it here as well. But Jack, I would tend to think that, re-signing Higgins and for me also re-signing Carl Joseph are two of the more priorities for the Browns this offseason. But I really believe that, re-signing Rashard Higgins needs to be at the top of their list to bring him back because the familiarity that he has with Baker, it really seems like he loves playing here. He gets along with everybody, it seems like, and when he's on the field, he just makes plays. He's not flashy. He doesn't always live up to the Hollywood name. He just makes plays. He's very solid, and just the rapport that he has with Baker, I think that he certainly has that going for him and in his corner as well. Because when a franchise quarterback wants you back, you tend to think that the receiver is going to be back on the Browns.
Yeah, I'm surprised that this isn't done already. I mean, we're sitting here almost 2 weeks up until free agency, and Higgins still isn't re-signed. I mean, haven't heard any, chatter about how contract talks are going. We heard during the season last year that they were talking about an extension. But yeah, I mean, you said it. Higgins he works and, he just makes plays. He's consistent. I don't know what him and his agent are asking for. I don't know what the Browns are offering, but you have to think that's probably the breaking point because it's clear. I think the Browns want Higgins back. Higgins said it on Friday, and he said it many times. He wants to be in Cleveland. This is a guy that they drafted him back in 2016. I think he was cut 2 or 3 times, and he just kept working. Andrew Hawkins talked about, that rookie season. They said anytime that Hawkins would get the wide receivers together. Higgins would be the first one in, last one out. And Hawkins has respect for him. And when Andrew Hawkins says something about a guy, you tend to take it with 100% true face value, because, you know, Hawkins is just one of those guys like that where he doesn't BS about stuff. They need to bring Higgins back. I think there's no doubt about it. I mean, you have Donovan Peoples-Jones back there. You have Kadero Hodge, who both have made plays when called upon. But, like, the chemistry that Baker and Higgins have had since, you know, Baker stepped in here a couple years ago, it's undeniable. I mean, it's a priority that they get this done. I mean, you have Beckham and Landry, obviously, but their futures are still very much up in the air. It's always talked about. You know, as long as Baker Mayfield is here as the Browns quarterback, you have to think Rashard Higgins is going to be here. It's going to be disappointing if they don't get a deal done and Higgins ends up signing somewhere else.
Do you feel like that there was any, you know, hidden message? Because, you know, it's certainly like silly season, right? You know, when it comes to tweeting and Peloton stuff, like you talked about earlier. It's certainly silly season around here, and it's, you know, it's also cryptic tweet season, and we'll talk about Njoku in a second. But do you think that there's any kind of hidden message behind what Higgins said on the radio specifically?
It sounds like that the Browns haven't made him an offer. Maybe it's not an offer that him and his agent like, but he was just saying, like, send the contract and I'll sign it. Now, if Barry sends him a contract and Higgins doesn't like it, is he still going to sign it? That's my thing. Like, we dealt with this a few years back with Terrell Pryor and even Breshad Perriman, which we'll talk about him in a little bit because there's a connection there with the Browns again. But I mean, you just have to wonder, like, has Higgins and his representation not liked the offer that the Browns have made, or has there even been an offer at all? So it's kind of interesting that now it's coming out to the media where there's going to be back and forth. Maybe, I don't think Andrew Berry would, you know, talk about it publicly about contract talks. I don't think he seems like that kind of guy, but it's very interesting that we're sitting here, you know, 2 weeks out. Higgins isn't signed. You haven't heard anything else about other guys that the Browns reportedly want to keep. Like, I know Barry's probably like, he likes to keep things private, business, but I mean, we're cutting down to where it's the point where if these guys aren't signed by, say, next week, that you would have to think like they're going to be gone. But we'll see how it all shakes out.
And, you know, I mentioned cryptic tweet season, and you know, we had David Njoku, you know, just before we started recording here, tweet out a couple of emojis with, like, writing on paper, and, you know, you see that this time of year, you know, it's kind of like signing a contract. Do you feel that Njoku's in the long-term plans of Andrew Berry and crew? You know, they did spend a lot of money last season on Austin Hooper, and, you know, Harrison Bryant played decently as a rookie, but you could definitely tell that Njoku took a leap, you know, with his blocking, among other things, this past season. Do you feel that he's in their long-term plans?
Tough to say. I mean, they picked up the 5th-year option, and, you know, that would be a sign like we want you here at least for the immediate future. It's tough to give him a long-term deal, I would think, because you have Austin Hooper now, and Austin Hooper is one of the highest paid tight ends. I think they like Njoku. I think they like what he brings to the table. You know that, you know, he's got Drew Rosenhaus, and Drew Rosenhaus is looking for, you know, the big money deal. Obviously, Njoku's not going to get it, being the 2nd or 3rd tight end for the Browns. I like Njoku's game, always thought, like, you got to give him time to develop, and he's going to finally come on and be that playmaker that the Browns saw in him when they drafted him in the 1st round. But his tweets have been interesting because, like, he's thanked the fans. He's told the fans they loved him, but this is also the guy that asked for a trade. And, you know, he made comments to Jim Rome last year saying, like, or not last year, during the Super Bowl week about, you know, his role with the team, how he thought he needed to be in a bigger role. But I mean, when he was called upon, he made plays. And you would think that would give him more of a role on offense, but obviously they have Austin Hooper. They like Harrison Bryant and all the other weapons on offense. It's hard for Njoku to be that potential breakout star just because there's so many options for Baker Mayfield to get the ball to. we'll see. I mean, he could be here. He could potentially sign an extension, or he could also be trade bait. The Browns could flip him to get a playmaker on defense or some kind of draft compensation that they could use to then draft a defensive player or somebody for the future on offense. I mean, it's tough to say with Njoku. I hope he's here. But I mean, that's not our decision. That's Andrew Berry's decision at the end of the day.
Yes, speaking of decisions for Andrew Berry, you know, obviously with the JJ Watt stuff the last couple of weeks, these rumors start to fly around here, and I think one thing though, when we hear a lot of these things, Andrew Berry and crew were very silent last year. At least in terms of signing people, it almost seems like they go radio silent. So when you hear things like the Browns are interested in so and so, you would tend to think that comes from either said player or other teams, right? At least that's my take on it. And the Browns over the last couple of days have been linked to linebacker Lavonte David from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, just won a Super Bowl, and also Breshad Perriman, who was with the Browns a couple seasons ago. Obviously, if you sign David, the cost on that is certainly going to be up there. And for a linebacker, Jack, I just don't see it with this front office. With this coaching staff, I just don't see them going out there and spending premier salary cap money on a linebacker. I just don't see it.
No, I don't see it either. I mean, if you go back and look at how much the Lavonte David's projected to make $13.3 million, according to Pro Football Focus. They did their free agent predictions and everything. The Browns spent $7.3 million on the entire linebacker room last year. B.J. Goodson was the highest. I think he made like $2.4 or $2.3 million. I mean, Jack Duffins talked about it. Joe Woods has talked about it. He wants 3 starting caliber corners, 3 starting caliber safeties, along with, who's up front on the defensive line. That leaves room for 1 linebacker. Now, could I see them saying, hey, we want our 1 linebacker, and we think it's Lavonte David, who is 31 years old. He's entering his 11th or 12th year in the league. He's a great player, don't get me wrong. Now, would he say, Andrew Berry, that's the guy I want, go get him? Could I see a scenario where they pay him and then just everybody else's draft picks and then they develop the next Lavonte David behind him? Maybe. That could be a potential scenario. They're also looking at Matt Milano, I guess, who's younger. And I feel like with, Andrew Berry's and Paul DePodesta's blueprint, that would be the more logical option. But he's also going to command a lot of money. I don't see them putting a lot of money into the linebacking room. I feel like that's a position where they might sign a B.J. Goodson type, maybe bring him back, maybe bring Malcolm Smith back and draft another linebacker to go with Sione Takitaki. But I don't see them paying big money for a linebacker in free agency. And like I put on Twitter, I'll believe it when it actually happens.
Well, how do you feel about Breshad Perriman? Because, when there's that sheet that leaked out, right? It talked about the analytical, like do's and don'ts, and not paying for depth. And if they go out and sign a receiver, obviously behind Jarvis Landry, behind Odell Beckham, behind Rashard Higgins, if they bring him back, signing a guy like that's going to be for depth. Obviously, if it's a playmaker, it's a little bit more than that. Maybe it's more so a role player than a depth player. But do you honestly feel that the Browns have a need for Breshad Perriman?
The only thing I can think of with that, it would be maybe to put pressure on Higgins' camp to say, hey, we sign the deal we offered you, or we're going to go out and pursue this guy. Or if they're going to sign Perriman, maybe they're going to bring back Higgins, and then maybe the trade rumors would really heat up for an Odell Beckham, or maybe they'd cut Jarvis Landry, because, I mean, that's been discussion too, and we obviously know how hot of a debate that is when it comes to Jarvis Landry and what he brings both on and off the field for the Browns. But If they re-signed Higgins, I don't think they're signing Perriman unless they move an Odell Beckham or a Jarvis Landry, because that's the only way. Perriman brings a lot to the table. Obviously, we talk about his speed. He seemed to have a good rapport with Baker Mayfield in 2018 down the stretch. Seemed to revive Perriman's career, which was definitely on the rails after being cut as a first-round pick with Baltimore. But it just doesn't make sense with the current group we have. And if we did sign a Perriman, it obviously means changes would be coming to the wide receiver room, because I think Pro Football Focus projected he would make around $7 to $8 million a year. We already have a lot of money committed to the wide receiver room, so I would think if we did sign him and it was for that much, that changes definitely would be coming to the wide receiver room for sure.
Another popular choice, as a potential receiver the Browns could go get is Curtis Samuel. How do you feel about that one?
Yeah, again, that doesn't make any sense to me unless unless changes were going to come. Samuel's definitely a solid playmaker. Obviously, people in the state of Ohio love him for what he's done at Ohio State, and he's had a solid start to his career in Carolina, but I don't see that as a legitimate option. I haven't seen any reports that would suggest that. It'd be nice because he is a playmaker. He does have the speed that the Browns need to add offensively, but as of right now, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
I guess when you look at guys like Breshad Perriman and Curtis Samuel, I think with this wide receiving core, they need to get faster. There needs to be an injection of speed. I know when you have somebody like Odell Beckham Jr., he's a deep threat, but he's not gonna burn by everybody. So I think that there needs to be added speed into this wide receiving core, and guys like Rashard Perriman, guys like Curtis Samuel, uh, maybe a guy in the draft like Tutu Atwell, in the second round, can provide that kind of speed. Um, you know, I just tend to think, Jack, that there needs to be some kind of speed injected into this wide receiving core, to allow underneath, allow more room for these guys underneath.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you've seen that as something that Kansas City exposed against our defense last year. And, we have big playmakers. Obviously, Odell Beckham has speed. When he comes back, hopefully he still has that explosiveness post the ACL injury. Um, Donovan Peoples-Jones, even Kadero Hodge has shown flashes of being playmakers in the vertical game. I just think the weakness was exposed when you have a Jarvis Landry and a Rashard Higgins who don't burn you with top end speed. They've shown that they can make big plays down the field, but I mean, we need to get a little faster. If we could find a Mecole Hardman or a Tyreek Hill type in terms of athleticism, speed, explosive playmaking in the draft, you would hope the Browns would consider it. I think it was Rashad Bateman, who is a projected first round pick, was clocked in around 4.3. He's been a projected first round pick. He's probably not going to be there at 26. I don't see the Browns moving up, but if they could find an explosive playmaker in the first, second, or third round, hopefully Andrew Berry pulls the trigger, just because Beckham and Landry aren't going to probably be here long term. I mean, obviously the trade rumors never stop with Odell Beckham, and Jarvis Landry is probably going to be moved here in the next couple of seasons. So the Browns need to find their replacements at some point. They have to, continue to build to contend now, but also prepare for the future moving forward.
Yeah, there's certainly a discussion I want to have, in terms of that exactly. Where do they balance winning now and building for the future? I think that's a discussion that I certainly want to have very soon. Especially with free agency and a draft coming up. So maybe that will be later in the week, or even early next week, to have that discussion. But yeah, I think with this wide receiving core, there's certainly going to be moving parts in it over the next couple seasons. Whether it's moving Odell, whether it's moving Jarvis Landry, whether it's not bringing back Rashard Higgins, there's certainly going to be moving parts, and I would say don't get too comfortable with everybody. But I think that at least this season, as long as they re-sign Higgins, I think it's going to be pretty much the same. Jack, as we get on out here, is there anything else that you want to discuss?
No, sir.
All right. You want to go ahead and wrap it up and go ahead and talk about everything JD has done on the website?
Without a doubt. I mean, for those that haven't gone to thedogland.com, we highly recommend you do so. Jack Duffin has been killing it with tons of content lately. The offseason deep dive where he broke down every position room. He's done potential contract extensions for Baker Mayfield, Denzel Ward, Nick Chubb, Wyatt Teller, a Jarvis Landry contract extension. His recent piece was a Sheldon Richardson contract extension. He also has broken down how the salary cap works, how the cap rollover has worked, and ways that the Browns could create cap space. So tons of work there. Definitely go check it out at thedogland.com. We're also on Twitter at thedogland and on Facebook. And as for me personally, I'm on Twitter at Jack McCurry08.
As always, you guys can follow me on Twitter at Anthony Joki. And as we get on out of here, most importantly, go Browns.